Have you ever felt lost in a world that seems hostile, where your beliefs and values are constantly challenged? Daniel's story is a powerful testament to faith and courage in the face of adversity. Imagine being taken to an unfamiliar place, far from your homeland, facing pressure to abandon your convictions. Daniel did this, and yet he did not let it shake him. His journey is a lesson in how, even in times of great stress and uncertainty, it is possible to maintain integrity and faith. Daniel did not just survive, he thrived and became a light in the midst of darkness. Throughout his story, he faced challenges that could have brought anyone down, but his perseverance not only strengthened him, but also brought hope to those around him. If you are looking for inspiration to face your own challenges and want to discover how faith can be a transformative force, join us as we explore Daniel's extraordinary story and the lessons it teaches us about courage, loyalty, and divine protection. Before we delve into Daniel's inspiring story, I want to extend a special invitation to you. If you've ever felt lost in the midst of challenges, or if you're looking for strength to stand firm in your convictions, subscribe to our channel. Here, you'll find heart-touching stories that teach valuable lessons about faith and courage. Don't miss out on the opportunity to join us on this incredible journey. Click the subscribe button and come explore the wisdom that Daniel's story has to offer. Let's go on this adventure together. Jerusalem was in ruins. Nebuchadnezzar, the powerful king of Babylon, invaded Judah, destroying everything in his path. Among the captives taken to Babylon was a young man named Daniel, of noble lineage, who had his life turned upside down as a teenager. He and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were forced to leave behind their city, their culture, and their worship at the temple of God. Nebuchadnezzar had a plan: to absorb the best of the Israelites to serve him. So he ordered that promising young men like Daniel be trained for the Babylonian court. They were to learn the language and customs of Babylon, even receiving new names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar, his friends were renamed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. This change of name was an attempt to erase their identity and mold them into the foreign culture. But even far from home, Daniel and his friends made a choice: they would remain faithful to the God of Israel. In their hearts, they kept faith, knowing that, despite being in a land where other gods were worshipped, the Lord was with them. Thus, with courage and trust in God, these young exiles would begin a story of faith and resistance that would unfold for years amidst the Babylonian power. Upon arriving in Babylon, Daniel and his friends were given the same luxurious food that was served to King Nebuchadnezzar: fine meats and wines. For many, this would be a privilege, but Daniel knew that this food did not follow the laws God had given to the people of Israel. Accepting it would mean compromising his faithfulness to God. Determined to follow his faith, Daniel asked the chief official, Ashpenaz, that he and his friends be given only vegetables and water. Ashpenaz was apprehensive, fearing that this simple diet would make the young men look sickly, something that could cost him his life. Nevertheless, he gave Daniel and his friends a 10-day trial. At the end of that time, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were healthier and looked better than the other young men. Surprised, Ashpenaz allowed them to continue on the diet. This choice of faithfulness was a milestone for them, a small act of obedience that would strengthen their faith for the greater challenges that lay ahead. Daniel was known in Babylon for his wisdom, but what really changed his life was the special gift God gave him: the ability to interpret dreams. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar had a mysterious and disturbing dream, but when he woke up, he could not remember the details. Still, he wanted answers, and he demanded that the wise men in his court not only interpret the dream but also describe it exactly as he had dreamed it. Unable to do so, the wise men were terrified, and the impatient king decreed the death of everyone, including Daniel and his friends. When Daniel heard this, he asked the commander for some time and, together with his friends, prayed fervently to God to reveal the dream and its meaning. That night, God showed Daniel the dream and its interpretation. The next day, Daniel appeared before the king and humbly said that only the God of heaven could reveal mysteries such as this. Daniel described the dream. Nebuchadnezzar had seen a statue with a head of gold, a chest of silver, a belly of bronze, legs of iron, and feet of iron and clay. He explained that each part of the statue represented a kingdom that would rise and fall, with the head of gold representing Nebuchadnezzar's own reign. Finally, a stone, a symbol of God's eternal kingdom, would destroy the statue, showing that God's kingdom would be established forever. Nebuchadnezzar was impressed and recognized the greatness of the God of Israel. He exalted Daniel, giving him a position of honor in Babylon. This gift of interpreting dreams not only saved Daniel, but made him a respected figure and demonstrated God's power before the king and the entire court. Now that you know this fascinating part of Daniel's story, we want to know, what did you think of the special gift he received from God? How would you feel if you were in his place, facing the king's wrath and the pressure to save his own life? Share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Your opinion is important to us, and we look forward to hearing how this story impacted you. Let's talk. After interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Daniel rose to prominence in the Babylonian court. The king, impressed by Daniel's divine wisdom, promoted him to a position of high authority, making him governor of the entire province of Babylon and chief of all the wise men in the court. For a young Hebrew who had been taken captive, this was a remarkable promotion and a recognition of his ability and faith in God. Daniel did not forget his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. With his new status, he asked the king to promote them as well, and his friends were placed in important positions in the administration. Together, they formed a close-knit team dedicated to honoring God amid the pagan culture of Babylon. As an advisor to the king, Daniel stood out for his integrity and wisdom. He knew that his success came from divine guidance, and he always sought God's help before making important decisions. This promotion not only transformed Daniel's life, but it also had a significant impact on the kingdom, showing that it is possible to remain faithful to God even in a challenging environment. Daniel's life at court was marked by extraordinary achievements and the constant need for steadfastness in faith, as new challenges lay ahead. The story of the fiery furnace is one of the most impactful in the lives of Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. After being promoted in the court of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar built a huge golden statue and ordered everyone to bow down before it when the music played. Anyone who refused would be thrown into the fiery furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, faithful to God, refused to worship the statue, even though they knew it could cost them their lives. When Nebuchadnezzar found out, he was furious and ordered them to be brought before him. He gave them a second chance, but the young men responded courageously, "If we are thrown into the furnace, our God is able to deliver us. And even if he does not, we will not worship your image." In response to their disobedience, the king ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than normal. The soldiers who brought the young men were consumed by the flames. However, when Nebuchadnezzar looked into the furnace, he was astonished to see 4 men walking in the fire, the fourth of whom looked like a son of the gods. Surprised, the king called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego out of the furnace. They emerged unharmed, without a single burned hair or smell of smoke. Nebuchadnezzar was so impressed that he proclaimed that the God of Israel was the true God and decreed that no one should speak against him. Thus, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were promoted even further in Babylon. This story is a powerful testimony to faith and God's protection. The courage of these young men inspired many to trust in the Lord, showing that when we are faithful to Him, He is with us in the midst of adversity. The story of Nebuchadnezzar's downfall is a powerful lesson about God's sovereignty and the consequences of human pride. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, was a great ruler who had built a magnificent city, famous for its hanging gardens and imposing walls. However, he failed to recognize that his success was a gift from God. After dreaming of a majestic tree that represented his kingdom, the Hebrew prophet Daniel warned him of his downfall. He explained that because of the king's pride, Nebuchadnezzar would be cast from his throne and would lose his sanity, living like an animal until he acknowledged that God ruled over the kingdoms of the earth. Despite the warning, Nebuchadnezzar continued to exalt himself. Once, as he gazed upon his great Babylon, he exclaimed, "Is not this great Babylon that I have built?" At that moment, a voice from heaven confirmed Daniel's prophecy, and the king immediately lost his sanity. He was expelled from the court and began to live among the animals, eating grass, with his hair and nails out of control. After 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar regained his sanity. He looked up to heaven and acknowledged God's sovereignty. In gratitude, he proclaimed, "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol the King of heaven, because all his works are truth and his ways are just." This story teaches us that pride can lead to ruin, but acknowledging God brings restoration. It is a powerful reminder that even the most powerful, if they do not humble themselves, can be brought down, but those who acknowledge God's sovereignty will find redemption. If you are enjoying the story of Daniel and the valuable lessons it brings, don't forget to leave a like. This helps us know that you are enjoying the content and want to see more inspiring stories like this. Your support makes all the difference. So, click the like button and continue with us on this journey. On the night of a great feast in Babylon, King Belshazzar celebrated with 1,000 nobles, while the wine flowed and delicacies adorned the table. In an act of defiance, he ordered gold and silver goblets that had been taken from the temple in Jerusalem to be brought in, using them to toast gods of wood and metal, disrespecting the sanctity they represented. As the celebration was underway, a mysterious hand appeared and began writing on a wall of the palace. The festive mood quickly turned to terror. Belshazzar, heart-racing, called his magicians and enchanters, offering generous rewards to anyone who could interpret the writing, but none of them could understand the words. In desperation, Belshazzar was reminded of Daniel, a wise man who had once interpreted dreams. Daniel was brought before the king, who offered riches and power, but the prophet rejected the offers. Instead, he reminded Belshazzar of how his father, Nebuchadnezzar, had defied God and faced dire consequences. Daniel then interpreted the written words, Min, Tekel, Parsin. He explained that God had numbered the days of Belshazzar's reign and that he had been weighed in the balances and found wanting. The message concluded with the prophecy that his kingdom would be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Although Belshazzar dressed Daniel in purple and gave him a gold necklace, nothing could change the fate that had been foretold to him. The conquest of Babylon by the Medes and Persians is an intriguing story of strategy and the sovereignty of God. During the reign of Belshazzar, Babylon was a prosperous city, but the king's arrogance and disregard for divine warnings led to its downfall. While the city's nobles were feasting and partying, Cyrus the Great, king of the Persians, was plotting the downfall of mighty Babylon. He noticed that the city was confident in its impenetrable fortifications. Cyrus decided to use a cunning strategy. He ordered his soldiers to divert the course of the Euphrates River, which ran through the city. As the water level receded, his men were able to enter the city through the dry riverbed. That night, while the Babylonians were feasting carefree, the Persians infiltrated and took the city by surprise. The battle was swift and decisive. Belshazzar, the king, was caught completely unprepared and assassinated, fulfilling the prophecy that Daniel had given earlier. The fall of Babylon, which represented pride and oppression, happened in a single day. This conquest is a powerful reminder of God's sovereignty. It shows that even the greatest kingdoms, when they ignore God's warnings and justice, can fall suddenly. History teaches us that true security lies not in human power, but in humility before God and His sovereignty over history. The story of the official's envy is an intriguing account that reveals the challenges Daniel faced in a hostile environment where wisdom and faith can provoke the envy of others. After the conquest of Babylon, Daniel stood out among King Darius' wise men. His ability to interpret dreams and his profound wisdom earned the king's trust, and he decided to put him in charge of the entire Persian Empire. This, however, did not please everyone. The officials, who were the leaders and administrators of the court, began to feel deeply envious of Daniel, for he was a Hebrew who had become one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. The officials, feeling that their position was threatened, banded together to try to find some flaw or error in Daniel. They scoured the prophet's life, examining his actions and habits, but to their surprise, they could find nothing that could compromise his integrity. Daniel was a righteous and faithful man in everything he did. He honored the king and, most importantly, remained faithful to God. Frustrated and with nothing to use against him, the officials began to plot. They got together and decided that the only way to bring Daniel down was to attack him through his faith. With this in mind, they went to King Darius and, in a stroke of cunning, persuaded him to issue a decree. The decree forbade anyone from praying or making supplication to any god or man except the king himself for 30 days. The penalty for disobeying? Being thrown into the lion's den. The king, vain and flattered by the proposal, signed the decree, not realizing that it was a trap for Daniel. Once the decree was issued, Daniel did not hesitate. He knew that he had to continue praying to his God, as he had always done. Courageously, he went up to his room, opened the windows facing Jerusalem, and began to pray, 3 times a day, as was his custom. The officials, who were spying on him, soon realized that Daniel had disobeyed the king's order. They ran to King Darius and informed him of Daniel's transgression. The king was distressed to learn that his friend and trusted administrator had been caught in the very trap he had set. He did everything he could to try to save Daniel, but the decree could not be revoked. Finally, with a heavy heart, the king ordered that Daniel be thrown into the lion's den. Before this happened, he addressed Daniel and said, "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." Daniel was thrown into the den, and a heavy stone was placed across the entrance. During the night, the king could not sleep. He worried about Daniel's fate, not knowing what would happen. At dawn, Darius ran to the den and called out for Daniel, fearing the worst. To his surprise and joy, Daniel answered, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. They did not harm me, for I was found innocent before him." The story of Daniel's exaltation and testimony begins when he interprets King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, which reveals the rise and fall of great empires. Impressed by Daniel's wisdom, the king promotes him to a high position and acknowledges Daniel's God. Upon receiving this honor, Daniel did not forget his roots and used his influence to glorify God. Whenever he had the opportunity, he shared his faith and made it clear that all his wisdom came from the Lord. Daniel's loyalty was tested when, along with his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he refused to worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar had ordered to be erected. Even under threat of death, they remained steadfast in their faith, demonstrating that they preferred to obey God. As a result, God saved them from the fiery furnace, a powerful act that did not go unnoticed. In time, Nebuchadnezzar faced God's sovereignty and, after a period of humiliation, was restored and began to praise the true God. Daniel became an example of faith and courage, and his testimony impacted many, showing that even in the midst of hardship, God can be glorified through those who remain steadfast in his faith. Daniel's exaltation teaches us that by serving God and sharing our faith, we can impact the lives of others and be instruments of his truth. In the face of this miracle, King Darius was filled with joy and ordered Daniel to be taken out of the den. And, as an act of justice, the officials who had conspired against him were thrown into the lion's den along with their families, and the punishment was carried out. This powerful story teaches us about integrity, faith, and divine protection. Daniel, even in the face of envy and conspiracy, remained faithful to God, and his courage was rewarded in an extraordinary way. The envy of the officials, instead of bringing him down, only highlighted the strength of Daniel's faith and the protection that God offers to those who are faithful. Now that we have come to the end of Daniel's story, we want to hear from you. What impacted you most in this narrative? Was it his courage in the face of the fiery furnace, his interpretation of dreams, or his role as a witness of faith in a hostile environment? Share your thoughts and insights in the comments. Your feedback is valuable, and we look forward to hearing how Daniel's story resonated with you. Let's chat. And so, we come to the end of Daniel's incredible story. Throughout his journey, we saw a young man who, despite being taken far from home and facing enormous challenges, never stopped believing in God. He stood out not only for his wisdom and courage, but also for his faithfulness in moments of great pressure. When he refused to worship the golden statue, even knowing the risks, Daniel showed that true strength comes from standing firm in your convictions. And when he was thrown into the lion's den, divine protection saved him, proving that God is always by our side, even in the darkest moments. Daniel's story teaches us that, regardless of the difficulties we face, we can be courageous and faithful. And just like Daniel, we can be light in the midst of darkness, impacting the lives of those around us. So, remember, never be afraid to stand firm in your beliefs and trust in God. After all, when we have faith, anything is possible. If you were inspired by Daniel's story and want to continue receiving more content that strengthens faith and brings valuable teachings, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you are becoming part of a community that seeks to grow and learn together. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any news. Thank you for following us, and see you next time.